All right. Thank you all for coming out. I'm here with Taso, of course, and there's three things I wanted to talk to you about today. We'll get at them one by one. The first thing I want to talk to you a little bit about the company itself, because the way that you operate was unique for a long time, becoming a little bit more common. I want to talk a little bit about the freelance marketplace and how it's changed in the last 2 years. And finally, the main topic we're here to talk about, the implications of a borderless talent marketplace. So as I mentioned, though, Toptal launched as a fully distributed, fully remote company in 2010, almost a dozen years ago. There's a lot of folks in the audience who are probably trying this out for the first time today. What have you learned in that time that you would recommend, or what advice can you offer, given your experience in this space?
Great question. We have a fair amount of experience, approximately, as you mentioned, a dozen years of experience. Yesterday was actually our 11-year anniversary, and we started as a fully distributed company from the get-go. And so we have a tremendous amount of learnings from those 11 years. And I would say the biggest takeaway is that remote work works. And it's a viable solution to many of the talent problems that exist out there, to many of the even economic and environmental problems that exist in the world at large. It significantly reduces the carbon emissions that happen just by a proxy as going to work and all of those sort of routine elements that exist with having to go to an office. And so remote work is not just good for the actual professional business part of the job, it's actually good for the world as a whole. And I would say that's the biggest high-level takeaway.
Absolutely. And now the company is over 1,000 full-time employees based all over the world. It's one thing to build a distributed team. It's another thing to scale a distributed team. What is that like, and how is it different from scaling in a traditional organization?
So I've never scaled a team to 1,000-plus core team members besides in a virtual environment.
Right.
What I can say is it works very well. Contracted out, we have over 5,000 people who are actually on contracts. And so as a workforce goes as a whole, to our knowledge, that actually makes us the single largest fully distributed company without an office in the world. And so it works, right? It's a true success story in terms of remote work goes. And
Absolutely.
now you have companies like GitLab and other fully distributed companies that are proving that the financial and regulatory elements as they pertain to remote work too. And so the question then just becomes, what does not work? And I haven't really heard much as rhetoric out there in regards to what does not work, except for possibly brainstorming or folks who don't have experience running remote companies or doing remote management, sort of making a fuss. And so if you have experience and you can draw off of experience, you can make it work.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of the companies that you mentioned and Toptal itself really rely on having a strong remote work playbook. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's like and what's included and what advice you have for others who are trying to put one together right now?
So we created a remote work playbook on how to run a fully distributed company that talks to the points of what is it like to be lonely all the time, sitting in your office or your home office or whatever it may be, 24/7, waking up, working in the same place that you're eating, sleeping, etc. So we talk about those elements. We talk about tools that you can use to facilitate collaboration well beyond Slack and Zoom. Zoom and Slack integrations, different APIs that folks can create and leverage to be able to make sure that a fully remote environment works well, regardless of the organization. And we also go into some of the managerial elements. A lot of folks make a fuss about how they need to see employees or they need to see contractors that they're working with. And we talk about how we've actually effectively built a world-class managerial experience, not just for our managers, but for the people working under them, and how that takes place in a fully remote environment.
Mm-hmm. And that actually segues nicely into the next section I want to talk to you about, is just about what the last couple of years have been like for freelancers. You interact with a lot of freelancers, you manage a marketplace for freelance talent. What has the last year and a half been like for this market?
It has been unbelievable. Our business has been exploding due to the fact that a lot of people in this world have recognized precisely what I've just stated, which is remote work works. People want to do that, and the more they embrace it, the more the world will go towards that direction. And so it's pretty common sense at this point in time that that's what the majority of people want, and the majority of people recognize that it works, so they're going to continue to push to make that more of a reality. And as a byproduct, we've been a tremendous benefactor of the push towards remote work, hence our business is growing the rate at which it is.
Absolutely. Well, so it seems like there's a combination of things going on here. It's both the increased awareness in the fact that this exists as an option. It's also increased comfort with working with on-demand talent. And to an extent, is it also just the advancement of the technology that enables remote and distributed work?
I would say it's a combination of both. Zoom, Slack, and many other foundational pieces of infrastructure for remote work have been in place for the last 4 or 5 years in a state that has been satisfactory. However, they have allowed further API integrations and other types of development that have made the remote work experience significantly more compelling in the last 2 years, I would say. And that has allowed companies, organizations, Fortune 500s to be able to adopt remote work and have it customized to their work experience. Fortune 500s, Global 2000s are now being turned on to that, and they're very attuned to this fact. As a byproduct, what you're going to see is more Fortune 500s and Global 2000s adopting it. The ones who don't are definitely going to be left behind.
Absolutely. And I saw that Toptal, as a marketplace, you have extremely rigorous standards for the talent that you feature in that marketplace. You only accept 3% of applicants. I did a little Googling, and I saw earlier that Harvard accepts 4.6% of applicants. So it is officially easier to get into Harvard than it is to be featured on the platform. How do you choose who gets in, and why is it so selective?
Well, it's so selective, and I'm sure many people can identify with this, because if you went to Harvard, that doesn't mean automatically that you're qualified to do your job. It's a signal, but we want to verify that signal. And so we do a bit more diligence than, let's say, most platforms do in regards to your qualifications. If you're a software developer, you're going to experience a rigorous software development process that is basically a screening process to see if you're an adequate software developer up to our standards. The same being a finance expert, the same being a product manager, the same being a project manager or a designer, and we test all of those manually. So literally, every single person who goes through our screening process is tested manually in a rigorous way. And that's something that we will likely always retain, as we don't believe that AI is anywhere near capable or competent enough to replace the people who are actually doing the screening today. And that will be a competitive advantage to Toptal, and hence we'll have top talent.
As the name implies. Now, I have to ask also, all of this is happening within the context of a global labor shortage. And there's been a talent shortage in many of the industries that you have on the platform. How is that affecting demand and adoption of on-demand talent? And where do you think that will be heading in the next little while if this doesn't get sorted out quickly?
Well, there's a great talk on this. If you just Google TED, I believe it's either TED or TEDx, BCG, Global Talent Supply Problem, you will see the talk that I'm referring to. And it's from a partner from BCG, Boston Consulting Group, who highlights the statistics as they relate to supply and demand imbalances globally relating to high-skilled labor. So software engineers, financial experts, professions of this nature. And what that states effectively is that this is never going to stop. There's not enough education. Demand will consistently increase. And so what will need to be created is more education, is more, let's say, awareness around the fact that there's such a significant imbalance in supply and demand, and the world as a whole will really have to come together and figure out how we educate people to be proficient in software development and other high-skilled jobs. It's a serious problem that I don't see an end to, and the remote problem is actually only going to fix it temporarily, or I should say the remote environment is only going to fix it temporarily, because once that gets saturated, then you really have no other options. Really, once you've tapped the world's labor market, there's no other market unless Elon Musk colonizes Mars or something like this in short order. So that's basically the synopsis of the situation, and it's quite a fascinating one.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about a world without digital borders, do you feel that the talent marketplace has become global? Is location completely irrelevant?
Well, I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, the question?
Is location completely irrelevant as far as talent is concerned?
I think location is completely irrelevant, totally. The aspect of location has no bearing on whether you can do your job or not. It's completely ridiculous that people state they should be in one place or another unless it's for compliance reasons. So there are some rules such as HIPAA compliancy or some regulated industries that require people to be in a certain location, whether that's North America or whether you're dealing with a South American company and they have to be in South America. But generally speaking, it's an environment where the most talented people in the world can do their jobs proficiently, and the technology world and the tech industry as a whole should really embrace that idea and work to bring it to the next level and make it more mainstream than it already is.
Absolutely. Well, we live in a world that was designed under the assumption that the talent lived close to the workplace. And there's so many parts of our society that will be rethought and restructured in this transition. And we only have about a minute left, so I can't expect you to break down everything that changes in a world where talent, location is completely irrelevant. But what do you think are some of the biggest implications of how the fabric of society changes in a world where, talent doesn't need to be located in the same place as the workplace?
Well, now you have a situation which is quite different pre-pandemic than it was post-pandemic, which we're not really totally past the post-pandemic.
I call it late pandemic.
Late pandemic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that word. And so the situation is that Silicon Valley and US companies as a whole, they have taken the economic model of paying people locally and pegging the salaries locally and leveraging that in a distributed way, which throws off the whole previous remote work experience, because now you have folks who are very highly paid but living in, for example, Warsaw, or living in a place that just is significantly lower in terms of cost. Whereas in Warsaw previously, the salaries were pegged to what folks in Warsaw were generally paid, but now that's changing late pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so the dynamics are evolving in a way that we haven't seen pre-pandemic. If they will sustain themselves or not is a big question, but what is for sure is that evolution is taking place in regards to remote work.
All right, well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming out to the talk.